This video is a short one and is designed to give you just the one quotation that you would need, no matter what the question is, if you're answering on an inspector calls, and in particular, if you're thinking about the role of the inspector. So they are these words, his final ones in the play. The first thing I would like to point out are these words here. Just remember this. This is something that he repeats throughout the play and reinforces his role as a teacher. This is a lesson that he wants to teach. And now he's summarising that lesson in this final quotation. The first one, of course, is the socialist message. So Eva Smith is perhaps one real person, or several girls that all the Burlings and Gerald have taken advantage of. But that's the inspector's point. It doesn't matter if it's just one girl, because there are millions and millions of Eva Smiths. And then he also wants to point out that there are John Smiths as well. So she becomes symbolic, an emblem of the working classes. It's worth pausing here to think about why he picks on an Eva Smith instead of a John Smith. And I think the reason for that is that women are far more exploited in this capitalist society. It's far more difficult for a woman to get a job and to keep it, and obviously once they do have a job, it's more poorly paid than the ones that men have. It's their lives he's talking about, not just their working conditions, and he tries to personalise them. So we've met Eva's hopes and her fears and her suffering, and she's been offered a chance of happiness at every stage. First at Mill Wards, and then that was taken away. Then with Gerald, and then that was taken away. And then perhaps with the idea of motherhood, but the possibility of being able to support the baby was also taken away by Mrs. Burling. And then this message, everything is intertwined with our lives, which is reinforced here. We are members of one body. And this is the language of the Christian service in church, the idea that we're all together as one in the church, and the church is one body. It's important for Priestley to do this, because most of his audience would have been Christian, even if they weren't socialist. And so by marrying his socialist message, which we had here, to the Christian message, he is trying to make it much more difficult for a Christian to take a capitalist point of view. Capitalism therefore becomes anti-Christian. It becomes against God. And then this warning depends on his audience having lived through at least one World War and possibly two. And I tell you that the time will soon come when, if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. And I'm sorry about the quotation here being wrong. This, of course, is a reference to the coming First World War and the wider political point that capitalism has led to this idea that every man is for himself and therefore every country is for himself, which has led to war. Another way of looking at war is a Marxist view, and that is that countries expand when they need more raw materials and they want to become more financially successful. And so wars then don't just become about disputes between neighbours, they become, if you like, massive corporate takeovers where one country tries to take over another. And one way of looking at the Second World War is certainly seeing Germany doing that and Britain doing that with its acquisition of empire, all these countries around the world that used to be pink on the map. And so we've had three ways into getting the A and the A star here. Firstly, we've considered his Christian viewpoint, then we've married that to his socialist perspective, and we've considered the symbolic role of the characters like Eva, and this idea that they are constructed by Priestley. They're not real people, they're constructs to carry the socialist message and the Christian message and to unite the two together. And then finally we have to consider the structure of this moment in the play. It's important for the inspector to leave here because that's the only way the family can be tested. the Burlings and Gerald have to change their views if the inspector's lesson, which was here, has been learnt. And Priestley does this because he wants to show that the families had an opportunity to learn that lesson, and he also wants to show that the more powerful, the more senior, the parents, refuse to learn that lesson, as does Gerald. This is important because Priestley is attacking the ruling classes that led the country towards the First World War and still stayed in power and led them towards the Second, because what he's after is political change. And to change politics, you first have to change the hearts and minds of your audience. And so that's a final reason for the inspector leaving here. Priestley is also giving his audience time to agree with the inspector's lesson. So there you have it, 6 minutes that will get you an A star on any question in an inspector calls, because the inspector's final words will always be relevant, no matter which character or which idea in the play you are writing about. Good luck.